Lesson 127, Algebra, Finding a Percent. The last lesson that we looked at, lesson 125, we used this equation, percent times whole equals part, to find the percent of a number. So we had questions, well, one of the examples was, what is 50% of 28? And you had to figure out what the missing number was. So we knew what the percent was, we knew what the whole or the total amount was, but we were missing the part. Today we are going to use that same equation, but instead of the part being what's missing, the percent is going to be what is missing. And we're going to use what we've learned in algebra before to figure out what that missing percent is. So let's start off with an example. You could come across a word problem, something like this. Helen answered 20 questions correctly out of 25. What percent did she get on the test? Okay, so if you look at that question, you think we've got some important information here. Oh, meant to use my highlighter. Let's try that again. She answered 20 questions out of 25. And we need to figure out what percent she got on the test. So the information that we know using our percent times whole equals part, we know that the whole test was out of 25 questions, and we know that the part or the piece of that 25 that she got right was 20, but what is missing is our percent. So we're going to represent that percent. Let's use the letter P for percent, but any letter will do. And now what we have is an algebra equation like ones that we have looked at before. So what we're going to be doing a lot of today is reviewing those algebra steps so that you can find the missing percent. Now, in our study of algebra before, you should remember that we want to always get the letter by itself. And the way that you do that is you look at what's happening to the letter and then you do the opposite thing. Since the letter P is being multiplied by 25, in our next step, what we want to do is divide by 25. All right, so I'm going to rewrite P times 25. And then you should also remember that in algebra, we can represent division with a line, you can think of it like a fraction line. What that is saying is P times 25 divided by 25. All right, and you should also remember that in order for the equal sign to be true, if you do something to one side, you have to do it to the other as well. So we're going to divide 20 by 25 over on the other side. So really what we have figured out here is that P is equal to 20 over 25. Okay, so we've got P by itself, but we need to still do some simplifying to figure out what 20 over 25 is equal to. And since that's a division sign, we're just going to do some long division over on the side over here. So we need to do 20 divided by 25. Now 25 can't go into 20, so we need to get a decimal involved over here. So our answer is going to be 0 point something. 25 goes into 200 now, 8 times, and then it actually goes in evenly. So you end up with 0.8, okay? So P is equal to 0.8. Now you're actually not done here. Because the percent is in decimal form, we want our final answer to be a percentage. She didn't get 0.8% on the test. She got, once we convert it to a percent, remember, bump that decimal, P is equivalent to 80%. And that is your final answer. So 80% of 25 is 20. So our missing percent is 80%. All right. You may also come across some questions that are not word problems, and they're a little bit trickier to think about. So you might come across a question, actually you will in your exercises today, what percent of 20 is 17? And that may be a little bit confusing to look at the beginning, but just think of it like a test score and also use what you know that for today's lesson, the missing number is going to be the percent. So we're going to set up an equation again. We don't know what the percent is. We'll represent it with a P. Now, the question says, what percent of 20 is 17? You just have to think logically which of those numbers would be the whole amount, and think of it like a test. Would it make sense for you to get 20 out of 17, or would it make more sense for you to get 17 out of 20? I suppose you could get 20 out of 17 if there were bonus points. So just imagine no bonus points. Think of it that way. So the whole number, the total test, is out of 20, and you got 17 out of 20. And once you have that equation set up, all you have to do is follow the exact same steps. What's being done to P? It's being multiplied by 20. To get rid of that, we want to divide by 20. In order for the equal sign to be true, if we divided by 20 over on the left, we have to divide by 20 on the right. So we end up with P equals 17 over 20. And then you just do your division. 17 divided by 20. 20 can't go into 17, so we'll get a decimal over here. 20 goes into 178 times. 8 times 20 is 160. Twenty goes into 100 nice and evenly. It goes 5 times. 5 times 20 is 100. Remainder 0. Lovely. Our percent in its decimal form is 0.85. But we're not done at the decimal form. We want to make it into a percent. So we bump that decimal. Our percent is 85% for your final answer. So as long as you set up your equation correctly with your percent as the missing number, the whole should be the larger number, the part should be the smaller number. Set that up, follow all of these algebra steps, and make sure you convert it to a percent at the end. You should be good to go for today. But a couple of things to remember. Don't forget to write an equation. You will be asked in the instructions to write an equation, so make sure that you write out that first step. Go back and highlight it for you. So your work should start with something that looks like that. The next thing to remember is to show all of your steps. Get into those good algebra habits of showing all of your work, and every time you do something new, write it on a new line, just like I did in my example over here. All right, get into those good habits. It's going to be very, very useful for you in grade 7 math and beyond. And as always, if you have questions, please contact me. I'm happy to help.